Welcome to session 1 of the Charged Motion seminar on electric propulsion. This seminar has been designed to teach as much information as we can about our research into ion propulsion in the atmosphere, AIP, to those who are interested, which we hope will be everyone. Do not let the current conventional wisdom that is based on a total lack of understanding about AIP discourage you from watching the rest of this introduction and the videos that will follow. We, the founders of Charged Motion. Tristram Walker Metcalf III, President and CEO of Charged Motion. Dr. Walter T. Cardwell Jr., Vice President and CTO of Charged Motion. And John F. Tuttle Esquire, Intellectual Property Attorney for Charged Motion, have spent the last 20 years engaged in research into ion propulsion in the atmosphere, AIP. Before we begin, we need to address the serious problem of the continuous flood of supposedly new breakthrough technologies that will change the world. To help separate which, if any, have merit and which do not, we offer the following observations. We recently came upon a public announcement by a company that will remain nameless announcing their breakthrough invention called the photon energy system that they claim will change the world, and they ask that you join them in doing so. This photon energy system is basically a solar cell that they claim is 20 times more efficient than a conventional solar cell. But conventional solar cells have efficiencies on average of about 20%, and their claim of 20 times greater output implies an overall efficiency of 400%. Any efficiency over 100% is a violation of the law of conservation of energy and thus is completely impossible. We do not question the motives of the principles involved because none of the individuals listed on their website seem to have any real background in science and thus may be sincere even if misguided. So many, like the people involved in PES, in their enthusiasm, try to widen the areas where they think their project is relevant but only further show how little scientific knowledge they have. A Tesla Model 3 can travel 280 miles at 70 miles per hour using 79 kilowatt-hours. Under the best circumstance with 100% conversion efficiency using only the energy available from sunlight, it can travel only about 19 miles a day per square meter of solar cells. Realistically, it would be closer to 5 miles in a day. In the air, things get much worse. The quadcopter container lifter has about 18.5 square meters of swept area. The largest helicopter to date is the Russian Mi-26 that can lift about 22 tons. A standard container holds half that. The Mi-26 rotor area is 200 square meters, 10 times the area of this quadcopter. As a result, the quadcopter fan loading will be 6 times that of the helicopter. For the same lift, the quadcopter will use 44 times more energy per pound. So if the Mi-26 engines produce 17,000 kilowatts and if the quadcopter were as efficient as the Mi-26, to lift one-third the weight would require over 246,000 kilowatts to lift the container. If the PES cells cover the top of the container area, 8 feet by 20 feet, approximately 16 square meters, it could hold the container aloft for less than 2 seconds on all the energy it could collect in a day. Equally troubling are the projects that are theoretically possible but economically doomed to failure. Solar highways are an example. Several test roads were built at a cost over 20 times the cost of solar farm and 10 times the cost of a nuclear power plant. Then there are the projects that require a completely new infrastructure that never materializes. Toyota's Mirai fuel cell-powered car required the establishment of the hydrogen economy to drive the cost of hydrogen down to where it could compete with other fuels. A battery-powered Tesla can have per mile costs as little as 4.5 cents a mile. The Mirai fuel costs are currently over 22 cents a mile. The average cost of gasoline? As low as 10 cents a mile. We could be accused by what follows of being guilty of what we are warning you about here. If you stick with us to the end of the seminar, we will show you that we are not. When we began, we soon learned that while ion propulsion in a vacuum was fairly well understood, in the atmosphere, it was and still is not. Within 2 years after the start of our research, we had discovered the true physics of AIP. After patents were filed, we began an 18-year quest for support to help us bring this technology to the world. We initially followed the usual funding paths, all to no avail. AIP has turned out to be a bridge too far. As a result, approximately 5 years ago we began creating the seminar with which we could teach the world what AIP is all about and how it could bring us to the next level of civilization. In this introduction to the Charged Motion AIP seminar, we will present to you the reasons why AIP could be as important to everyone as the personal computer has become to them, because it holds the promise of bringing personal aviation to everyone in complete safety. Electric propulsion, which includes ion propulsion, was first proposed in 1905 by Robert Hutchings Goddard, the father of modern rocketry. His first patent in electric propulsion was filed in 1917. In session 5 of the seminar we will present a brief history of electric propulsion. Ion propulsion has been used in the vacuum of space, beginning with NASA's first launch of CERT-1 in 1964, which led to the Deep Space One NASA probe launched in 1998. But in the atmosphere, after almost 120 years, no one has been able to create an ion engine with a thrust and efficiency competitive with other methods of propulsion. We think we can. We base this belief on one-dimensional simulations of the correct one-dimensional equations of AIP that we have derived. The solution we propose has been simulated in 2 dimensions by an independent lab whose results show the effect we have predicted. We have or will prepare up to 25 sessions in this seminar. In this introduction we can only briefly introduce these subjects, and while you may be skeptical of what we are saying here, we strongly urge that you do watch all the sessions to understand each topic fully. You really should, because we truly believe that this is where your future will lie, not in 50 years or 25 years but in the very near future. We have developed a design study vehicle that we call an iJet, to estimate what we should expect if the result of our research leads to the revolution in transportation that we think it will. We have created many simple video clips to show people that our atmospheric ion propulsion technology is not science fiction, and more importantly that it is not just toys for the rich nor just transportation that only big corporations can afford. It is about bringing personal aviation to ordinary people. If we are successful, it will replace the automobile because it will be cheaper, faster, safer, travel farther, all while producing no pollution. While these videos may seem crude by today's standards, due to lack of time and antiquated software, these videos are only meant to convey the essence of our technology, taking as little time as possible to produce. Also in these videos, because vectored thrust can generated on all sides of the vehicle, we indicate where and how strong the thrust is by a blue exhaust representing the ion neutralization that occurs at the exit. If successful and it does become the dominant form of transportation, by moving transportation off the ground it will save 1 million human and 1 billion animal lives a year, and it will take us to the 5th level of civilization. It could have the ability to travel up to 5,000 miles a day or reduce an hour daily commute to under 10 minutes using currently available technology. Due to the lack of hot exhausts or spinning blades and having hovering capability, the iJet can land in buildings on any floor, making point-to-point transportation safe by eliminating the need for remote unsafe parking areas and public transportation where you must travel according to their schedule, not yours, and where serious crimes do occur. In time, personal intercontinental hypersonic transportation may be possible using your own personal iJet parked in your garage. Why should the distance you can travel in a day be a measure of civilization? Because it defines the size of your world. Today, thanks to the automobile, we are living in the 4th level of civilization as shown on the map, because the automobile is cheap enough so that it is available to the vast majority of people in the developed world and is capable of traveling on average 500 miles in a day. An iJet with a range of 5,000 miles traveling at a speed above 210 miles per hour will take you to the 5th level of civilization. To reach the 5th level of civilization, we believe that any vehicle could take us there must at a minimum have the following capabilities. It must operate from the owner's home. It must require no more skill to operate than that required to operate an automobile. It must operate safely in crowded conditions. It must cost no more than an automobile. It must operate safely in all weather conditions. It must be at least as safe as an automobile. It must create no more pollution than an automobile. It must be able to travel at a speed of at least 210 miles per hour if it is to travel 5,000 miles in a day. And it must be able to replace the automobile. Not only will the I-Jet revolutionize transportation, moving it to the fifth level will transform civilization as well. Transportation will be transformed because virtual highways cost almost nothing and the massive infrastructure costs of roads and bridges will no longer be needed, as will the cost of policing these physical roadways. When not constrained to virtual highways, an I-Jet can fly using 3 dimensions, reducing traffic density by the volume of the flight area over that of linear roadways. With the ability to land on, and in, buildings on any floor, architecture will also be transformed. Both new and existing buildings will be able to integrate much safer point-to-point transportation options, congestion-reducing traffic and minimized parking areas using a virtual valet service, and vehicle landing and storage on any floor in any building. Here is downtown Northampton, Massachusetts today. We hope by 2035 that the I-Jet will begin to be the dominant form of transportation, leading to when roads will no longer be needed so that Main Street can be converted to other uses. Ultimately, we hope that every city and town will use these streets for parks for the enjoyment of all. Many streets in use today that are recovered for other uses tomorrow can be used for permanent street fairs and music festivals, bringing a sense of community that is lacking in so many places today. But it is the elimination of the destruction of the environment where we hope the greatest impact will occur, because in time we will be able to restore wildlife to its natural habitat wherever we so wish. Once roads are no longer needed, we can begin to restore the planet. Billions of dollars must be continuously spent to maintain massive highway infrastructures like the massive highway interchange called the Hi-5 in Dallas, Texas. Once reclaimed, trees and even forests can be replanted. In time, wildlife will return to areas reserved for their use. By every measure, the I-Jet will have a positive impact on the environment in proportion to its use. If you did nothing else but make the I-Jet the dominant form of transportation, the tenfold increase in mileage at a given speed would reduce transportation-related emissions by a factor of 10. Total carbon dioxide emissions in the United States in 2022 was about 5 billion metric tons. Transportation-related emissions accounted for 37% or 1.8 billion metric tons. Just on mileage alone, the I-Jet could reduce transportation carbon dioxide emissions 90% to 0.18 metric tons. Even if transportation mileage does increase due to the higher speeds and longer range of I-Jets, if the I-Jet is powered by green hydrogen, it will generate no greenhouse gases and thus could eliminate all transportation carbon dioxide emissions. As this figure shows, if all transportation were by I-Jet, just on mileage alone, the resulting total carbon dioxide emission of 3.38 billion metric tons would result in reducing carbon dioxide emissions to that of 1970, and if green hydrogen is used, levels will be reduced the full 1.8 billion metric tons to 3.2 metric tons, no matter how much mileage increases, resulting in carbon dioxide emissions to that of 1968. If you believe that, quote, climate change is a pressing danger to humanity that needs to be addressed now, then the I-Jet realistically is the only way for countries to achieve their CO2 commitments without wrecking their economies, because with I-Jets it costs absolutely nothing. If on the other hand you believe that, quote, climate change is not a pressing issue, then the I-Jet is also the answer for you, because the reduction in CO2 will occur anyway, costing everyone absolutely nothing. An atmospheric ion engine does require a source of electrical energy. Options today are quite limited. Aircraft cannot tolerate the weight and low energy density of batteries if they are to have a range competitive with existing aircraft. This leaves only fossil fuels and hydrogen as the only practical energy sources currently available. With today's emphasis on renewable clean energy, only hydrogen remains as a clean renewable energy source. Hydrogen, however, has two drawbacks. First, because hydrogen is a gas at room temperature, when used as a fuel it must be stored under great pressure, requiring heavy pressure tanks if its energy density is to be competitive with other energy sources. Liquid hydrogen has the disadvantage of having to be stored at -253 degrees Celsius, and it requires energy to cool the hydrogen to liquefy it. This energy is usually not recoverable. But once liquefied, its liquid state can be maintained when stored in thermally insulated tanks, which are much lighter due to their operation at much lower pressures. Our current design study is confined to the use of liquid hydrogen with an assumption that 50 to 100 pounds of liquid hydrogen will contain the same energy as 20 to 40 gallons of gasoline. The second problem with using liquid hydrogen is the infrastructure and transportation costs getting it to the end user. For automobiles, this is a real impediment to the use of liquid hydrogen to power automobiles. With the I-Jet, the infrastructure and transportation costs are greatly reduced. It is estimated that there are 111,000 to 150,000 gas stations to cover the 3.8 million square mile area of the United States. This would mean on average that at 30 miles per hour in most locations a gas station is at most 10 minutes away. At a speed of 200 miles per hour, it would take under 4,000 hydrogen fueling stations to cover the country. With so few refueling stations needed, refueling stations could be part of every liquid hydrogen plant, eliminating transportation cost from the plant to the end user. But the I-Jet can also be refueled by an aerial I-Jet tanker, making it possible to refuel I-Jets everywhere, even over oceans. To transfer 100 pounds of liquid hydrogen would take only a few seconds, making it possible for a single tanker to handle hundreds of I-Jets per hour, and because the docking and fuel transfer will be controlled by the I-Jet, refueling can be accomplished in complete safety. In addition, the turbulence that normally trails large aircraft like the tanker can be minimized using the tanker's vectored thrust to shield the refueling I-Jet from the turbulence, while the refueling I-Jet's dynamic stabilization will remove whatever turbulence remains. Saving human lives. On February 7, 2020, the World Health Organization published a report that stated, approximately 1.35 million people die each year due to road traffic crashes. Road traffic crashes cost most countries 3% of their gross domestic product. More than half of all road traffic deaths are among vulnerable road users. Pedestrians, cyclists, motorcyclists. 93% of the world's fatalities on roads occur in low and middle income countries. Low and middle income countries only have 60% of the world's vehicles. Road traffic injuries are the leading cause of death for those aged 5 to 29. The laws of physics. As the image shows, there are so many blind curves and other road hazards that even with the assumed increase in safety that many hope will occur due to autonomous vehicles, the laws of physics preclude vehicles traveling on the ground from ever being 100% safe, given that objects on the ground are frequently hidden from sensors, preventing sufficient reaction time to avoid collisions. I-Jet safety. As shown here, above the clutter on the ground, I-Jets will always be able to see and avoid all other objects in the air. And having been moved off the ground, all on the ground will be 100% safe. This is why the I-Jet will save over 1 million human lives a year. But the I-Jet will be totally safe, since only during takeoffs, landings and taxiing is there a potential for accidents with people, animals, or objects on the ground. The I-Jet taxis at very low speed, and its object detection system will not let it contact any object on the ground. Takeoffs should not be a problem, since the I-Jet can be prevented from taking off if it senses anything near it or above it. It is only during landings that there is a potential risk to people and objects on the ground. But again, the I-Jet sensors will not let it land on any object or uneven ground. Unlike all mechanical methods of propulsion with their spinning blades and hot exhausts that are real hazards to people and objects on the ground, the I-Jet's is no threat, since its exhaust temperature is expected to be about 10 degrees above the air inlet temperature. To replace the automobile, the I-Jet must fly in any weather. Its dynamic stabilization allow it to fly through any turbulence without the passengers feeling anything. Total engine failure, while unlikely, is possible. But the I-jet has wings so that a horizontal dead stick landing is possible. When total power has failed, small auxiliary ion engines with a small reserve energy source can be used to control the I-jet during a dead stick landing, saving animal lives. It is estimated that 1 million animals are killed each day on the highways in the United States alone. In addition to the 365 million animals killed in the United States each year, worldwide that number approaches 1 billion. With every wonder man has created, there is always a downside, and the I-jet is no exception. This is obviously speculation based not on a real I-jet but on the following characteristics that these hypothetical military vehicles will derive from the characteristics of atmospheric ion jet engines. With the high cost of military weapons today, a cost estimate of $50,000 may seem absurd, but you should bear in mind that the basic military I-jets could be based on a standard mass-produced commercial I-jet body selling for less than $25,000 with production volumes in the millions. Also bear in mind that a standard commercial I-jet will include many of the necessary external sensors, an interface to a navigation system, and having autonomous operation software will have most of the capabilities of current military missiles, drone, logistic and combat aircraft. Swap out the commercial navigation system for a secure military system and the basic platform is ready to go. This estimate does not include the weapons system. They will have vertical takeoff and landing capability and the ability to hover as long as the fuel holds out. They will initially have a top speed approaching Mach 1, the speed of sound. They will ultimately have a top speed limited only by the available power on board. They will have intercontinental range at slow speed. They will be able to stay on station for up to 24 hours or more without refueling. They will be able to stay on station indefinitely with mid-air refueling. They will have multi-engine, almost instantaneous vectored thrust. They will operate at low temperatures. They will operate in almost complete silence. They can be manned or unmanned. While the combat capabilities of I-jets are important, it is its strategic and logistical capabilities that are far more important. As of 2021, the United States Army had approximately 549,000 active personnel and approximately 563,500 Reserve and National Guard personnel. To make best use of these resources, the military has defined these 5 strategic missions. Rapid deployment of a joint U.S. field army capable of overwhelming force in one major regional conflict. Prompt deployment of a second force, mostly active units, capable of defensive operations in a second major regional conflict. Maintenance of a small strategic reserve composed of active and reserve units. Maintenance of a rotation base of reserve forces. Maintenance of reinforcements, provided by the reserves, that could enlarge either or both major regional conflicts should requirements expand. What all 5 missions have in common is the efficient deployment of resources to a combat region anywhere in the world. Deploy a brigade, 3,000 to 5,000 personnel, anywhere in the world in 96 hours, 4 days. Deploy a division, 10,000 to 15,000 personnel, anywhere in the world in 120 hours, 5 days. Deploy 5 divisions in 30 days. Deployment goals. Boeing C-17 Globemaster III. I-jet. Unit cost, $191 million. Unit cost, $50,000. To meet the Army's rapid deployment goals outlined above, it would take 4 days to transport 1 brigade by conventional means with a fleet cost of $20 billion, but it would take only 1 day by I-jet with a fleet cost of only $250 million. To transport 1 division by conventional means would take 15 days with a fleet cost of $50 billion, while it would take only 1 day by I-jet with a fleet cost of only $750 million. To transport 5 divisions by conventional means would take 75 days with a fleet cost of $50 billion, while it would take only 1 day by I-jet with a fleet cost of only $1.25 billion. Clearly the 30-day 5-division rapid deployment goal cannot be met with the current fleet of conventional aircraft, thus the need for foreign military bases using conventional aircraft. The goal, however, can be reached using I-jets without using foreign bases. Deployment. Each C-17 can carry up to 134 troops or up to 80 tons of payload. The average payload for each flight is approximately 47 tons, reflecting the fact that most flights do not carry a full load. A brigade typically weighs 15,000 tons including initial supplies, while a division weighs approximately 70,000 tons. In any deployment, fewer than half of the available transports are used, so to move 15,000 tons using half of the C-17 fleet would require 320 flights to transfer supplies and an additional 20 to 30 flights to transfer personnel. Depending on distance, flight times each way could be over 10 hours, with 2 hours on each end to load, unload, and refuel. To transfer a brigade in 4 days would require 85 C-17s, almost half the fleet. To transfer a division would require 1,500 flights, and to do it in 5 days would take 300 C-17s. Clearly this goal cannot be met with the current fleet. Conventional deployment times assume that the local airports will not be a limiting factor in deploying troops. This is probably true for most modern countries but cannot be assumed to be true for most areas of the world. The only way to meet this goal currently is to pre-position supplies nearer any potential trouble spot. Deploying from bases in the United States would not be possible, thus bases would have to be maintained in foreign countries. The total cost of the 212-plane C-17 fleet was approximately $40 billion. That $40 billion would purchase over 800,000 I-jets, enough to provide an I-jet for each soldier. With a payload of 600 pounds, the fleet of I-jets would carry 240,000 tons of supplies. Assuming that I-jets will make heavy armor obsolete, which will lower the total weight that must be transported, with each soldier having his own I-jet, round trips would not be necessary, making it possible to deploy even 5 divisions anywhere in the world in a little over a day. In addition, because I-jets do not need runways, the condition of local airports is irrelevant. More importantly, every soldier could fly directly to any battlefield in the world in a day, ready to fight with 500 pounds of supplies and ammunition, with vastly improved battlefield mobility over that of conventional military forces. It has been reported that the United States currently maintains almost 800 military bases around the world. Britain, France, and Russia together have about 30 foreign bases. These bases are the only way that allies can support each other to deter aggression, given the time it takes to deploy military forces. But all that can change with the I-jet. Being able to deploy any size military force in a day, any aggression can be confronted anywhere in the world. Unless for reasons other than stopping aggression, foreign bases will no longer be needed, and each nation can keep their troops on their own soil to defend against aggression, while at the same time being able to go to the aid of any ally facing any external act of aggression. There are 44 landlocked countries in the world. As we have seen in past wars, many countries, even allies, have for various reasons withheld permission to deploy through their country. I-jet deployment by air can in all but the 44 landlocked countries eliminate the need to obtain permission to deploy through another country. Of the 44 landlocked countries, only 3 countries are landlocked by a single country: Vatican City, San Marino, and Lesotho. Total military logistical support by air means that all that is needed to support a military operation in these landlocked countries is flyover rights from any enclosing country, because ground infrastructure is not needed. With few exceptions, pre-positioning of supplies and ammunition would not be necessary. Soldiers could send their I-jet unmanned to be resupplied by plane, by ship, or from a ground depot far away from the battlefield, without the long vulnerable supply lines that have always been necessary in past wars. Like conventional military aircraft, I-jets can be refueled in mid-air. Everything we have presented here so far has been defensive in nature, but we have only just scratched the surface of defensive military applications. We do not wish to divulge more unless we have to, but I-jets could in time put an end to the threat of nuclear war. In the picture shown here, which I-jets contain a nuclear bomb? Because nuclear weapons are so expensive and hard to come by, all nuclear attack strategies employ decoys to enhance the chances of a nuke getting through any potential nuclear defense system. With almost all surface-to-air missiles costing between $1 and $3 million, currently even the United States and Russia can only protect a few critical targets. The same low-cost advantages that I-jets have over mechanicals will make it possible for an entire country to be protected. Is there a chance for real peace?
You will forgive me if I speak bluntly. The universe grows smaller every day, and the threat of aggression by any group, anywhere, can no longer be tolerated. There must be security for all, or no one is secure. We have an organization for the mutual protection of all and for the complete elimination of aggression. At the first sign of violence, they act automatically against the aggressor. The penalty for provoking their action is too terrible to risk. The result is we live in peace, without arms or armies, secure in the knowledge that we are free from aggression and war, free to pursue more profitable enterprises.
While we do not have extraterrestrial robots for a police force, I-jets, due to their cost and capabilities, they could serve as our unmanned police force to stop aggression and ultimately lead to an end to wars among the countries of the world. During the Cold War, the United States Strategic Air Command developed techniques to launch heavy bombers using what is called minimum interval takeoff, or MITO, in 12 to 15-second intervals. They could therefore get 100 aircraft airborne in as little as 25 minutes. But as this video shows, because I-jets can take off vertically, 100 I-jets could take off in under a minute. Because I-jets can be deployed so rapidly anywhere in the world, they would be a real incentive for all nations to join in a worldwide mutual defense pact where the I-jet resources of all nations would be available to guarantee that the borders of every nation that joins the pact will always be secure. But any I-jet association will exist only if it limits its activities to its one authorized mission, deterring aggression between nations. If it ever is subverted to try and force any nation into what the group thinks is proper behavior, it will fracture and cease to exist, in that any nations unhappy with their treatment by the association will leave and the pact will fracture, and we will be back to a world of war between the multitude of mutual defense pacts. If nations wish to change the internal behavior of other nations, they must do so using non-aggressive means such as sanctions and emigration. Many will say we already have such an organization in the United Nations, but that is not true. That is why there are all these mutual defense treaties, because the United Nations, in trying to do too much, does too little. While the I-jet could end overt military aggression by one country against another if it is developed first by those countries that want to live in peace with their neighbors, they must not ignore the tremendous risk facing them from aggressor nations if they choose to let the aggressor nations develop it first. I-jet military effectiveness. What we have tried to present here is that even though the I-jet currently does not fly faster, higher, or carry a greater payload than conventional mechanical aircraft, what it does offer is all its capabilities for 1/2000th of the cost of a sixth-generation fighter aircraft. For those who think the I-jet is no match for sixth-generation fighter aircraft, there are many war game simulations on the internet that show how more capable aircraft can be defeated by overwhelming numbers of less capable aircraft. But the I-jet's capabilities are limited only by its power source that should improve rapidly to where I-jets will be the most capable aircraft in the sky. The discoveries that we have made are not just applicable to the transportation sector. Many bioengineering applications may be possible, such as the creation of an artificial heart and other organ replacements, saving hundreds of millions more lives. The ultimate purpose of this seminar is to form a new organization called the Electrostatic Propulsion Consortium, made up of companies, universities, and individuals interested in supporting this endeavor. We will have more about this organization in an upcoming session. In the next few weeks we will be publishing the remaining sessions of this seminar. The first sessions will deal with who we are, what we have done, followed by the necessary background information that you will need to understand that which will follow. These sessions will be followed by sessions dealing in greater depth the subjects just hinted about above. These will be followed if necessary by semi-technical sessions about our discoveries, and finally sessions devoted to explaining how we hope with your support to develop these technologies. Session 1. This introduction. Session 2. Who we are and what we have done. Session 3. A timeline of events that have occurred these past 20 years. Session 4. Fundraising. Session 5. A brief history of electric propulsion. Session 6. Levels of civilizations. Session 7. Transitions, how we can transition to the fifth level of civilization. Session 8. How the planet can be restored. Session 9. How electric propulsion can save so many lives. Session 10. How electric propulsion, if not used properly, can destroy even more lives. Session 11. The physics of electric propulsion that we hope everyone will understand. Session 12. The advantages and disadvantages of atmospheric ion propulsion. Session 13. The advantages and disadvantages of atmospheric ion propulsion engines. Session 14. Charged motions design study vehicle called an iJet. Session 15. The merge depletion junction field effect transistor MFET that can enhance the safety and capabilities of iJets. Session 16. A discussion of possible fuels that could be used to power electric propulsion vehicles and the real advantages and disadvantages of each. Session 17. A discussion of fuel systems and the real advantages and disadvantages of each, along with what are realistically possible improvements of each. Session 18. Potential applications of both electrostatic propulsion and the MFET in bioengineering. Session 19. A brief overview of the history of Western civilization that will form the principles under which the EPC will always operate. Session 20. A proposed conference of interested parties to discuss the founding of the EPC. Session 21. A proposed consortium of companies and universities for the purpose of research and development of electric propulsion, with all intellectual property licensed to its members on an equal basis. Session 22. A personal message from the President of Charged Motion, Tristram Metcalfe. Session 23. A personal message from the Vice President of Charged Motion, Dr. Walter Cardwell. A closing message from the founders. In this not-so-brief introduction to AIP, we have barely scratched the surface of what we will be presenting in future sessions of this seminar. Do not dismiss what we are saying here due to a lack of technical detail. That will come in the sessions that follow. Also, like this introduction, most of these sessions will be written so that everyone can understand what we are saying, and we will even use cultural references to make a point, as we did in this introduction using Clayton and Gort. Again, do not dismiss what we are saying here due to a lack of technical detail. That will be provided to those who support us once the necessary NDAs have been approved. The goals of this seminar are to gain support for the development of AIP and the MFET and all of the applications we believe they will spawn. To try and break the stranglehold that governments, universities, corporations, and the media have over progress by their commitment to groupthink and by the concentration of resources into the hands of a few. To eventually bring as much of the new knowledge that we have discovered to everyone in the world so that everyone can have a voice in how their future evolves. To show the younger generations that their future could be a bright future and not the gloom and doom end of the world vision that so many have today. Up next, who we are. Follow us on X at charged_motion. Follow us on YouTube at charged-motion. Our website is at charged-motion.com. You can contact us at contact@charged-motion.com. If you would like to support us, please go to our website and click support in the menu.